Brad Fink. About 4 minutes ago, he entered the hospital for some fun of having his shoulder, his elbow, and perhaps even his thumb, a little minor surgery on all three. So all of us are in a better place than he right now, and but if you would keep him in our thoughts and prayers. This is something that was scheduled, and unfortunately it's not something that he could have moved. He'd like to get it done so he can get on with rehab. And so instead of him being up here, I will play multiple duties today. In addition, on a little bit more somber note, I think all of you are aware that Ralph Nix's wife passed away earlier this week. Announced just prior to my coming over here is that she's at the Hart's Funeral Home up in Macon off of Zebulon, and they'll have viewing this evening from 5 until 7 with the funeral tomorrow, I think, at noon. So just to make sure. At 1? Yeah. Thanks, Laura. Again, in this very festive time, this very important holiday season for all of us, if you would keep Ralph and his family in your thoughts and prayers as well. With all of that said, I'd like to begin with my good friend Jack Steed for both the pledge and the prayer.
Stand so we'll be ready for the pledge. Almighty God, we make our earnest prayer that you will keep the United States in your holy protection, and that you will lead our citizens to brotherly love for one another. We ask you to bless the 21st Century Partnership, and that you will endow it by enabling it to continue to forge a strong partnership with our communities and Team Robbins. And may we always protect and safeguard what you have given us. But the greatest gift you gave us, the gift we most extol, is the gift of life. We ask that you pray that we pray that you be with our friend Ralph Nixon and his family during their trying time. We pray for the members of our armed forces. Defend and protect them as they defend and protect us. Bless those who have given their last full measure of devotion. We shall honor them forever. And we ask you to protect our Constitution and the many privileges that grants us, and especially for the privilege of seeking your blessings both privately and openly. Now, as we go about the business of the 21st Century Partnership, we pray for its leadership, that it may lead us both wisely and with resolve. And last but not least, we are grateful for many blessings you have bestowed upon us, for bringing darkness to light, and for this Christmas season. In his holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please join with me in the pledge of allegiance to our country's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much. Please be seated. Jack, as always, thank you. We are blessed and honored that you would continue to support us the way that you do and bring your words and thoughts to this group as we move forward. As you can see by the agenda, our next is financials. Kenny Kitchens is somewhere in America. He is not here, so I am playing triple duty today, and we'll stand in with him and then let Laura go through her portion of the financials after I cover it. For the period between September and November 30th, we had a beginning balance of $156,000. $156,828. We had a total of deposits of $32,560 during that time. Total expenses of $149,108, which gave us an ending balance of $40,280. Ms. Laura?
Yes, on the Middle Georgia Economic Partnership, we had a beginning balance for the quarter of $12,789.67. A total revenue of $11,519.33 and operational expenses of $20,000, leaving a balance this quarter of $4,309.
Thank you very much. As all of you are aware, we will have to get that approved by the board. Since we do not have a quorum, I will not ask for a motion at this point in time, but what we will do is via email ask for approval of our financial report. Any questions that we can answer on the financial report at this point? With that, since we have the opportunity to enhance our financial status, and my good friend Lynn Murphy from Cox has asked that we take the opportunity to make a presentation today. I'm going to let you say a few words first, and then when you're ready, we'll do the presentation.
Okay, perfect. Well, first of all, to say it's great to see so many familiar faces. Actually, when Paul Nagel and I were on staff at the Macon Chamber a long, long time ago, we were kind of on the other side, the very front end of this partnership, and so it is awesome to me to see so many folks who have been with us through the years. I also love the addition of some new faces to the partnership team. We are with y'all, and we are fully committed to what y'all are doing, what you're driving in this community. And so on behalf of our employees at Cox Communications and Chris Howard, who is my very important co-worker, we have two messages for y'all. First of all, we're with you. And secondly, we get it. We get how important this institution is to this region, to this state, and we get how important it is to our country's national defense. And what we want to do is we want to help you help other people get it as well. And so with that, we are bringing a check today. Chris has the big check that will not work at the bank. I have the little check that will work at the bank. And so I'm not going to take a picture with that one because this might not look very impressive. But with this, we're with you.
Thank you so much.
We're very good.
We'll do it in front of here.
And you can go.
And I'm going to focus there just in case folks get, and we have a whole bunch of bling for you. But most importantly, Ms. Lynn, what we do have is a plaque to say thank you to you for the tremendous partnership, and what's included in that is not only cash for us, but also in-kind support, and we're blessed in this community to have tremendous support, and we appreciate all that you do for us.
Thank you.
And I promise I won't tell my favorite Cox
Please do
story.
not.
Our financial report did not include that, did it?
It did not, sir, so life is good. When Miss Judy does the records, if it's not in hand, we don't put it in there, and so what that does is the report just got a whole lot better. So with that, let me turn it over to Chrissy Miner, our COO, talk a little bit about what we're doing.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here this morning. What I wanted to do is do a quick overview of what we focused on in 2013 as far as the communications aspect, and really what we're looking at for 2014. So 2013 broke down into 3 areas: information and outreach. I'm sure, and hopefully most of you have seen those. We're talking about the newsletter, we're talking about the website, social media platforms. And then we really focused on presence as well. And presence means speaking to the Rotary clubs, speaking to groups, going to Washington, going to Oklahoma, going to Utah, media events, sponsoring some events throughout the community, because we really need to get our name out there, because again, that awareness will help when we issue those calls to action. People aren't trying to figure out who we are at that juncture. They already know who we are. They already know the importance of what we're doing, so they just act. So that is the importance of making sure they're aware of what we're doing. And that ties right into brand awareness. Brand awareness is the billboards that you've seen throughout Warner Robins and Macon, and then also hopefully the television commercials that you've seen on Cox Communications. These things all tie together in the hopes that, again, we can raise the awareness of the partnership, Robins Air Force Base, most importantly, in Middle Georgia, and the importance of that economic engine. The 2014 focus areas remain much the same, but there is one addition to that, and that is Think Differently campaign. So you'll start to hear that in the next year, along with all those other things, because again, we haven't reached everyone, for sure. So we will continue with our brand awareness campaign, making sure that folks are aware of what we're doing, and then we will turn to the Think Differently, and that's going to tie into folks that are aware of what the partnership is, But again, it's going to tie into how we make sure that we're best postured for the future of Middle Georgia. Thank you.
Thanks, Chrissy. And before I say anything, let me, for those that have been part of this process over the last many years, I will tell you that today, with the efforts of both Judy and Chrissy, it has been absolutely remarkable to accomplish and do the things that we have done and been able to do. I would tell you that today, with the effort that Chrissy has gone through, in particular with brand awareness, getting a discussion of not only the partnership, and if all we talked about was the partnership, it'd be a self-licking ice cream cone, but most importantly about Robbins and its economic impact. She has done a remarkable job that has reached well beyond Warner Robins and Houston County into the surrounding counties and throughout the entire region. And it's gone beyond there, and I'll give you just one example of that. In the last probably 30 days, we've had at least 3 of the Senate candidates representing both parties contact us to want to come here and talk to us about our perspectives of Middle Georgia and our perspectives of what a potential future senator from the state of Georgia ought to know about the military. And what that represents is that people want to hear from us, they want to know about Middle Georgia, and we have the ability to help communicate and shape the message that one of our future senators may have. And I think that's tremendously important, and I give both Judy and Chrissy tremendous credit for having accomplished what they have to highlight what the partnership is doing, and more importantly, the importance of Robbins Air Force Base, not only to Houston County, but to this entire region. And we'll continue to work, we'll continue to give you feedback, but I'm delighted that we're able to help influence that and bring that kind of interest to Middle Georgia and the important things that are here. So with that, let me move forward. Let me talk about 2 things that are ongoing. 2013 has been an absolutely remarkable year. And most of that has not been in a positive way when you talk about our federal government and what has been accomplished, and more importantly, what has not been accomplished. All of you, and I have a chance on a regular basis because he's our landlord, to talk with Mr. Lowe and understand the impact of what sequestration and furloughs and the reductions in the defense budget have meant to Robbins and what it has meant to this region economically. And all of us have felt the adverse impact of that. The good news is that this week we have begun to see a ray of hope, and that is that those federally elected officials in Washington are returning very slowly to normal behavior. If you are not aware, last evening, the framework for a 2-year budget agreement was passed by the Senate, had already been passed by the House, and is now today going over to the President for signature. And although that does not ensure we won't have problems in 2014, we still need an appropriations bill or some sort of omnibus event. What this will do for all of our federal government is allow them to more effectively plan and not do the knee-jerk reactions that they've had to do this past year as we've gone through the budget throes that we have. That will allow us to ensure as a federal government that we can make decisions now that are perhaps more long-term than 60 or 90 days. And will allow for the, at least Department of Defense, but all of the federal government to better plan, and in doing so, allow those that are affected by that planning to have a better understanding of what the future looks like. In addition, later today, the Senate will take up the National Defense Authorization Act, which will tell the Department of Defense how it should spend the dollars that it's going to get. And again, this is absolutely critical because it gets the department out of the knee-jerk reactions that it's been going through. With that said, this is not a panacea. Announced late last week was the fact that the Air Force is going to reduce by some 25,000 active duty military. Also announced last week was the fact that we'll see a minimum reduction of another 900 civilians from throughout the Air Force. Some 200 plus of those will come from Air Force Materiel Command, so there will be some impact here. And the efforts that were passed as part of this 2-year budget, what in fact it does is somewhat mitigate, though not totally mitigate, the impact of the Budget Control Act of 2011. In other words, there will still continue to be reductions in those budgets, but it will be a smaller reduction than what we had anticipated, and now the federal government will actually be able to plan of how it's going to go execute this. It is indicative of the times that we are in, but as I sit here and look at 2014, there is a strong ray of hope that our ability to plan and execute as a federal government that trickles down to us here in Middle Georgia will be much better than perhaps we saw in 2013. And with that, decisions can be made that will allow perhaps contracts to be awarded that we can award locally and allow us collectively to benefit from that which we would expect to see. So I'm cautiously optimistic. It is still tough times, but I think there is more structure today than perhaps we had in 13, and so I think all of us should have at least some level of optimism as we look at 2014. So with that as a foundation, let me talk a little bit about what we did in 2013, and then talk a little bit about what I think you'll see us do in 2014. We completed the staff, and no one was more excited about that than me. I still take out the garbage, but every once in a while, both Judy and Chrissy helped me do that. But in reality, what we did was bring a level of expertise to allow us to do the things that we need to do to help protect this space and help grow this economy. We did not succeed in the reorganization that we wanted to do. The 501c3 paperwork was submitted. We are still waiting patiently for the IRS to approve it. I'm hoping to be on the earth at least another 10 or 20 years, and so I'm hoping somewhere before that point in time we will see the IRS finally respond to us, and hopefully we will get our official 501c3 status. In the meantime, we continue to leverage a great relationship with Catherine Dennis and the Community Foundation up in Macon to help support our operations. The other thing that we wanted to do was restructure our 501c6. And although the new bylaws are written, what we need to now do is formally bring them out to all of you, let you vote on them, and optimize our structure and adjust it officially. And you'll see that sometime in early January. So that is something that did not get accomplished totally, but we should hopefully by January have that complete. We went through a lot of changes, and one of the benefits of bringing Judy on is she has helped us put in place business processes, business practices, so that we can act as a real business. I use the word normalize. In many cases, it was to create the processes that were necessary to do the things that we needed to do in a way that you could be proud of as your representation, working the issues that we do, supporting Robins Air Force Base. And as part of that, it is clear to me that the message got out a year ago, and we joked about that this morning. We weren't sure that we were going to make payroll. In other words, Judy and I weren't quite sure we had enough money left in the bank to get paid. And I will tell you that entire environment has changed in great part because of generosity of many of you in this room. What we have at this point, the total pledges for 2013 is $716,000, which I'm absolutely delighted with. Received to date is close to $690,000. We would expect to see probably by the end of the year that reach about $700,000. Quite frankly, there are some communities who have, we've asked to pledge, and they, through the Regional Commission, pledges have been sent out, and for whatever reasons they've elected not to support us. And we'll continue to work that in 2014. But I could not be more pleased with the performance that we have had. Slide, please. In addition, we've talked a lot about the prep studies. You all have seen them. Many of you have had a chance firsthand to walk the wall with us. Those that haven't, we'd be delighted to show you. But what it did, and the way I describe this to folks, is if we say you want to go to Atlanta and ask somebody for directions, it's always a good place to tell them where you want to start the journey from. And what these studies have done is allow us to understand where our starting point is on our journey, and our journey is to become a world-class defense community that ultimately supports the future of Robins Air Force Base. There was some great news in there. There are some things that we ought to be tremendously proud of, and we have to do a better job of vocalizing that and bragging about it. There are some areas that we needed to do some improvement, and what we've got to do is hit that head on, and we will in 2014. But we now understand where we are today. And so it allows us to, the efforts that we go through to make sure that we're doing the right things to get us to where we want to be, to support this base and to grow this community. Chrissy talked about this. This is Chrissy Miner, her effort in communication and education. And many of you, your ability to articulate what we're doing is a direct result of what she's done with our webpage and our weekly articles that are out to you telling us about what's important to the base. Two issues in terms of supporting the workforce that are worthy of mention in this group is SHARE. And again, Chrissy and Judy did a remarkable job of banding together with many of you to help those that were adversely affected by the furloughs, to give them an opportunity. And what it also did is introduce many of you to each other, to understand what this community can offer to those in need, then band together to help people. And it was remarkable not only to watch those that were impacted from the base, but to watch you interact with each other and understand what the art of the possible is. And that will bode well for our community well into the future. The other is a conversation that I think is tremendously important. It had to do with the fact that we publicly talked about the relationship between union and management. And where we are today is dramatically different than where we were last April. Since that point in time, there has been a union election. Those that were in office were voted out of office. We have a new team of union leadership at the base today. And I would tell you as one data point, and it's only one data point, in the first 40 days, grievances have been reduced by 40%. In 40 days. It is about attitude. It is about the desire of folks working together. They are just as aggressive as taking care of our workforce as the previous group was. In fact, in many ways, I think even a little bit more. But they also understand that taking care of the workforce isn't the end state. It's ensuring the workforce is taking care of the mission. And that's ultimately what's necessary. And so, although we're early in the new regime, we all have reason to feel very, very optimistic about how that relationship will continue to grow over time. We're very, very pleased with it, and thank many of you in this room for helping facilitate that conversation and getting us to where we need to be. And finally, this idea of presence. Virtual presence is actual absence. If you're not in the room, you don't normally get a chance to vote. And although we, I think, picked up our game in this area in 2013, not only with our elected officials, but with the Association of Defense Communities, I think we still have a ways to go. And what you'll hear us talk a lot about, and we'll ask you to participate in, is dramatically increasing our presence across the board as we get into 2014. Slide, please. So that's where our dollars went in 2013. Normally what you'd see is plan versus actual. All of you run businesses. I will tell you we had no idea where our money was going to go as we started 2013. I don't think any of you would be overly surprised by that as we tried to build the budget to do what we thought an organization like the 21st Century Partnership ought to do in a little bit different environment. So we're very pleased. And what we found are there are some areas where we can make progress in reducing some of our costs. You'll see that represented in our 2014 proposed budget. But again, very, very pleased with the support that we got to do the things that we needed to do. Slide, please. So what's 2014 look like? We have these studies. What are we going to do with them? And we've already begun a very aggressive campaign. For example, one of the areas that we've talked about is the area of crime. And it is a partnership with a variety of different organizations to see if we can make a difference. We had the opportunity to meet with Sheriff Talton and Sheriff Davis together to talk about this as an issue. They looked at it, recommended that we get a broader group together. And so we're going to do that. But they want to be part of the solution. They're the ones that drive the solution with our chiefs of police and a variety of folks throughout the region. Not only our law enforcement, but things like district attorneys and our judges. And so how do we bring this team together to be able to talk about this in a holistic way? And I think you'll see that in 2014. And through the leadership of Sheriff Talton and Sheriff Davis, that is the kind of thing that will happen. Are there follow-on studies? The answer is we ought to understand what kind of trend lines we have. We saw announcements earlier this week about graduation rates in Macon. Great news story. That graduation had jumped up considerably. And so the question is, will that trend continue? And again, that's a positive story for all of Middle Georgia. Because it's not just Warner Robins, and it's not just Houston County, but in many cases it's the idea of how we protect this as a region. We're going to continue to talk about communication and education. Part of this, quite frankly, will be focused on people inside the fence, on the base, to make sure they understand what the issues are. We've been blessed with a tremendous support from many of you in this room and many of the businesses and foundations throughout Middle Georgia. But we want to change up a little bit as we look at fundraising in 2014. There are folks who ought to have skin in the game that don't today. And we're not looking for the $50,000 pledge from them. We're looking for the $5,000 pledge because that's all they can afford. But it's about being engaged and being part of the opportunity. And so that's where our energy will be as we look forward. And many of you will be asked for your input. Some of you already have it. And some of you will be asked, quite frankly, to re-engage and look and see if your organization, your company, your group can continue to support us. And then finally, presence. And the word surge was picked specifically because what we want to do, we've been energized. But what we need is a higher level of energy, and that's up to us to make that happen. We need to be in Washington, not just with our elected officials, but in the Pentagon. They need to know who we are, what we stand for, and what our expectations are. And looking at you and understanding as senior leaders within Middle Georgia what you represent, and understanding what those senior leaders within the Pentagon are telling us, those are the kind of things we want to be able to do more so. We've done well with General Litchfield. We've brought him here a number of times. There'll be an event on the, I think, 9th of January, which will be a STEM summit for the state of Georgia. Just a great type of event that will allow us to talk about science, technology, engineering, math across the entire enterprise with 3 senior leaders from the Air Force, not just General Litchfield, but the commander of Air University from Montgomery, as well as the Air Force's Deputy Chief of Staff for Logistics and Engineering. 3 stars coming together with a number of senior leaders from throughout this state to talk about science, technology, engineering, math. Those are the kind of things that we want to be able to continue to do to draw folks together to be able to, first of all, highlight Middle Georgia, but also work together to find solutions. Slide, please. And again, continuing to focus on our workforce, taking care of them. With the unknowns that we have, there will be those in need, and so how do we move forward with that? A lot of our energy will be spent trying to help our base reduce its operating costs. make it more competitive when compared with others. That through our public-public and public-private operations, many of you have already been engaged. We're going to continue to expand that and look for different ways to drive down the operating costs on Robins Air Force Base. And in doing so, can we find new opportunities to bring new businesses to the base? It may not look like the way it always did. It may not simply be a new military mission. Is there an opportunity to expand the footprint of many of our private contractors on the base? And are there new and better ways to grow the economic business at Robins? Because a job at Robins is a job at Robins. Whether it is a military job, whether it is a civil servant job, or whether it is a contractor. And so what are those opportunities and where can we find them? And as part of that, working together with economic development in Houston County and in Bibb County in particular, but throughout the region, to diversify our economy. When 28% of the wages earned in Middle Georgia generate from the base, and 52% of the wages earned in this county generate from Robins, it's time to look at how we expand that economic base and take some of the pressure off of Robins Air Force Base in terms of being able to drive our economic engine. And so a lot of great efforts going on right now by Angie Giesling, Pat Topping up in Macon. We are working with them to provide whatever support we can. I am encouraged. I think there's a lot of opportunity out there, and I think we'll take advantage of that opportunity to continue to grow this region economically. And so we're proud to be part of that, and we're going to continue to be part of that as we go through 2014. To do that costs a couple of bucks. It is not much different. Operating costs actually are going to come down in 2014 versus 2015. What you see here is the beginning of an attempt to build a war chest for studies and for support that we know we're going to need as we get closer to a base realignment and closure announcement.